This episode contains sensitive content. Listener discretion is advised. Welcome to the Culture Podcast, where we uncover the hidden mechanics of high control groups, their tactics, and their impact. And we speak with the survivors who broke free. My name is Derek, and I'm your host.
My name is Trinity, and I'm also your host. On this podcast, we explore cult life as real people who have lived through the life-changing process of leaving a high control group.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. We are so excited today to have a guest on the podcast with us. I'm always, for the most part, joined by Trent. Hey, Trent.
Hello.
We're excited to have Bree on the podcast. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, guys.
Welcome. We're so glad to have you. Trent reached out to you on TikTok, or you guys got in touch on TikTok a while back. We were actually looking at it before we started recording. When did we initially connect? And this was all the way back of December of 2025.
Yeah. I got anxious and didn't never respond.
It is really interesting, as me personally, as I've started to dive, and Trent as well, into social media and, putting your shit out there, just whatever. It's a whole nother avenue of, sitting down unfiltered for an hour or so and just really talking. And so some people shine and excel at, hey, I can create this quick 30-second video or whatever. That's a struggle for me. I can't do that. Sit down for an hour and have deep conversations. So I don't know what it is with the wiring, but yeah, to each their own. But we're very happy to have you on. You have a very unique story, which we're going to dive into. And I know Trent, with some of the connections he's had with you online, we decided he's going to lead the way on this one. So I'm going to pass it over to Trent, and let's have a good conversation. Trent.
Thanks, buddy.
Yeah.
So, everyone, this is Bree. Bree, welcome.
Hi.
Okay. So tell us. I guess I met you on TikTok. So why don't you tell us how you got started on TikTok and what you do there?
So I love watching lives and podcasts are how I get through my day. And when TikTok got offline and then came back, they lowered the requirements on how many followers you had to go live. And so then I was like, oh, cool, I can actually go live now. And so I went live and I was just doing random stuff. And I just went live one day talking about the cult that I was raised in. And it was it blew up. It was totally crazy. I was completely unprepared. But yeah, so now once or twice a week, I'll sit down and I just answer a bunch of questions about the IBLP and just how I was raised.
Cool. Well, that is definitely why I wanted to talk with you, because I've done, I heard your story for 5-10 minutes, and then I got curious and I started looking into, what you had talked about, and it was fascinating. It was similar in many ways, and I'm sure we'll talk about this more, but can you explain what that is, what the acronym stands for, what it is to you, how you got involved?
Yeah, so I was a part of the Institute of Basic Life Principles. It is a cult that was started by Bill Gothard in the 1960s that's based off of fundamentalist Baptist beliefs. And so my parents joined when I was around 13 or 14 years old because of the Duggars. We watched
Wow, the
them on
Duggar
TV.
family. Okay, so can you explain the connection between the IBLP and the Duggars?
So the Duggars are a part of the IBLP, huge figures of the IBLP, actually. So yeah, when they got their TV show, they were obviously, promoting their lifestyle, the homeschool curriculum and all of the things. And we were already pretty legalistic Southern Baptists. So my parents were obviously super intrigued. And I actually knew somebody from a mission trip that I saw on the TV show. And that's kind of how we ended up finding that connection.
If possible, can you dive a little deeper for maybe people that don't even know who the Duggars are?
Yeah, so the Duggars are this massive family. They have 19 children, and they are fundamentalist Baptists. And when they had, I think it was 14 kids, TLC found them and wanted to do just one docu episode on them. They just thought it was interesting. But that was also during the time when TLC was doing a lot of reality shows of families, and they were showing the extremes. So you're getting a lot of like Keeping Up with the Kardashians and Jersey Shore, all of those people. But they were also showing the opposite side of the extreme, like John and Kate plus eight, or the Duggars ended up getting their own TLC show, and they just added up the numbers until they ended up with 19 kids, and it was 19 kids and counting at the end there.
It's wild.
Yeah, so they got their
And,
own TV show because the docu episode was a huge hit.
and you also mentioned Bill Gothard. Can
He
you
is
can you give a little insight on Bill?
yeah, he is the leader of, or the founder of the IBLP. He started in 1961. I believe it was called Campus Teams back then. And it was basically just him teaching his 7 basic life principles while he was in seminar. And him and I think it was like 15 to 20 like other students were just going around and hosting these seminars, and as they were getting older and graduating, things just got bigger and bigger, and they compounded on the satanic panic of the 70s and the 80s, and it just grew from there. At some point they created a homeschool curriculum called the Advanced Training Institute, and that's kind of where it got a second leap into
Because
the nation.
then they're molding young minds, and it's a homeschool
Exactly.
program, an entryway.
Exactly. And so then by the
Wow.
time the Duggars came onto TV in the early 2000s, things were dying down a little bit again. And the Duggars just brought it back. They were like, oh my gosh, we can be in the same homeschool curriculum as these reality TV stars. Is awesome.
Wow.
So,
That is crazy. And already, I mean, okay, I have so much going on in my mind. The first question, and I hate to ask this because I know this could be triggering, but can you summarize maybe the 7 principles?
7 basic life principles are design, authority, responsibility, suffering, ownership, freedom, and success.
Wow.
And so they all had like different Bible verses that went with it, and huge explanations. I used to have a website that I could reference to, and that website has since disappeared. I don't know where it went. I think it got taken down. I don't know why. But he had different Bible verses, mostly from the Old Testament, that compounded on top of these principles and made it seem legit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. And I wanted to speak to some similarities for our listeners real quick. First of all, like I'm realizing that my childhood was so different than everyone else's and so similar to
Yeah.
yours in many ways. Because first of all, Jehovah's Witnesses are exclusionary and isolative sometimes, and
Mhm.
homeschooling is very popular. I was homeschooled for most of my childhood. And it was popular to do private homeschooling, groups of homeschooled kids, and even schools and private education programs based around, dogma. So, I mean, that's kind of
Yeah.
crazy. Same things, different story. And then
Mhm.
I guess it's just crazy how the message spread because we see this with cults, but we also see it with positive groups. It's like the same growth. So, like, AA, for instance, the Alcoholics
Mm.
Anonymous group, formed very similarly. Just a couple guys with ideas who wrote a book, and then, that has a lot of positive impacts. But then we have like the Witnesses' origin story is very similar. It was just one guy with some ideas, and they called themselves Bible students. They just started talking the same language. So,
Now,
Yeah, for
you'd stated
sure.
that you'd stated that your parents joined a little later in life. Is that what I heard?
Yeah, so I was 13 when we officially joined the IBLP. Like I said, we were already really legalistic Southern Baptist, which is basically one step above fundamentalist Baptist. And I had already been homeschooled, so it really wasn't a far jump for my family to move to the IBLP. We never left the Southern Baptist churches, but most of our lifestyle was closer to a fundamentalist Baptist lifestyle.
Do you remember what that time was like, and kind of what the decision was that your parents decided to kind of pivot?
I remember it was because I knew somebody on the TV show. I had just
Mm.
come back from a mission trip. I was like eighth or ninth grade, really, really young. And we were watching 19 Kids and Counting like 2 days after I came back from the mission trip. And I was like, oh my God, I know that girl. And so
Oh,
then parents ended up connecting. And I don't know if they joined IBLP before the conference or after. I think it was probably before. But yeah, we ended up going to the conference and using the wisdom booklets for our homeschool curriculum that coming year. And, a few extra restrictions were added once we added the IBLP. But like I said, we were so similar already. It wasn't a massive lifestyle change for me.
hmm.
If I could, I wouldn't want to slow down a little bit. Thank you so much for everything you shared. I think that's a really good intro to Bree. What we usually do is we're really curious about your life, So this inflection point of when your parents took on the IBLP, you're 13. What was life like before that point? Like, what was it like for you being young? What was your religious life like? What was the climate? Can you just explain a little
Yeah.
bit about life up to 13?
Yeah, for sure. So I was homeschooled my entire life. So I was as popular as a homeschool kid can be at that point. I was a cheerleader. I was involved in a ton of different social groups. I just liked being around people. I had a boyfriend. We were planning my quinceañera because I'm like half Hispanic. And so like it was just like a fun time for me. I loved my life. We had just adopted 3 kids. And I know that my parents were off and on about the whole homeschool thing because we were struggling finding a good curriculum that was working for all 6 of us, especially once we added the 3 kids. It was easier when there were just 3 of us to find a homeschool curriculum that works, but having a now high schooler and then a 5-year-old was a lot. But yeah, I was pretty normal. I didn't really listen to much secular like music at all. We didn't really listen to any music except for hymns and a few Christian songs. My dad doesn't really like the contemporary Christian music all that much. We didn't really watch too much TV, but we did watch some.
One thing you mentioned a few times seems to be with how you were brought up. Homeschooling was like the norm. Is that
For
is
me,
that
it felt like the norm. I never really knew anything different until third grade. I went to
Yeah.
a private school for like 3 months in third grade because my mom had my youngest brother. And that was the first experience I ever had with any sort of school. So I didn't really know anything different.
was there any moments where you asked your parents like, why don't I go to public school?
Yeah, I actually begged them to let me go to public school in high school. I did not want to be homeschooled any longer, but they were pretty firm in that this was the decision for the family and that's what we were doing.
Do you remember like what their reason for homeschooling was?
If I remember correctly, there I was in a private school for like preschool 4K. It was a private Christian private school. And I think for kindergarten, they were going to do some sort of story in the lesson plan that was had a gay couple or something. And my parents lost their minds over it and decided I wasn't going to kindergarten there. And that was
Hmm.
just like the beginning of it. So,
I was just going to say, you guys can't see, but I'm over here like vigorously nodding my head because this was my experience too. Like, up until second grade, I was homeschooled. My mom loves to tell this story. Like, my first day of real school, I come home crying. And I'm just like,
oh
Mom,
no.
like, nobody wants to actually learn. They just want to goof off and be friends. Like, I just want to learn. And I was like mortified by the social experience of school. But yeah, it was like normal for me too.
I feel like Jehovah's Witnesses were definitely a mix. There was a lot as I grew up where I saw them be homeschooled, but then there was also a lot that were in traditional public schools. So I don't feel like it was necessarily a mandate for Jehovah's
Mm.
Witnesses.
It's just common.
But it was definitely like if the two parents, like maybe one of the parent wasn't working or they just had the way and means to do so, it was definitely preferred.
And then another word I thought of was sheltered. Do you feel like you were
Mm.
sheltered as a kid? Sheltered
I
upbringing?
do. Yeah, I do. I think, especially now, like looking back, I'm missing a lot of pop culture references and things like that. That, like, you know, I just didn't even hear of. I didn't even know what gay meant until I was like 16. Like,
Wow.
I just like, yeah, that was just my life. I just didn't know anything. So yeah, definitely looking back, it feels very sheltered.
What was your relationship and feelings toward your parents like up until that 13 point? Like, did you feel safe,
Um,
you know?
yeah, we were pretty close. We've always been pretty close. My mom has always been my best friend. I'm the oldest kid and the oldest daughter.
Okay, cool.
So we've always just kind of chilled. And then me and my dad share a lot of the same interests. So we
Cool.
just like have always been the two that are like staying up watching car shows or video shows and like,
Love
or
that.
football shows. I mean, not video shows.
That was my sister and my dad too.
Yeah.
So
Like,
then there's this moment like you're 13 and life has been the way it is and they start to adopt this new program. So like what was that like, the adoption period, like the new normal?
it was a little frustrating for me at some point, and I'm not 100% on like the timing of it all, but at some point they took my cell phone and sold it. I think it was maybe
Oh,
like a year after we joined. I After I broke up with the boyfriend that I had, I wasn't allowed to date any longer. So he didn't make me like force me to break up with my boyfriend, but then I wasn't allowed to date anybody else. So that was frustrating because I was like, I like to date. I'm 14 years old. Like, what do you mean I
yeah.
can't
Yeah.
do that anymore? Um, but everything else pretty much seemed mostly normal. We didn't really change how we dressed. We were always very like modest in the first place. So not much changed after except for those two big things.
Okay. And then obviously at some point, like you're a very different person now, you're not affiliated, and that must have been a process. So I guess
Yeah.
that's where I wanted to spend most of our time and learning like how all this went, how your leaving went, what, prompted you to do that. And then I want to spend the most time on your life after and how your deconstruction and reparation has gone, all that.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
what were the, like, as you
So
look back, yeah, tell us, what was it like?
So I was all gung ho for it. I was a devout Christian from before we joined the IBLP. And so the IBLP teachings always made sense to me. I was 10 toes deep into it until I had my baby. And then I got married, I got pregnant, and me and my husband decided that as soon as he got home from his deployment that we were going to go to our first conference and rejoin the IBLP centers. And then my baby hit 3 months old, and that's when they want you to start blanket training. And so I started blanket training my son. And do you guys know what blanket training is? Should I go into
Please
that?
explain like we don't know, because our
Okay,
listeners probably don't.
that's fair. Okay, so blanket training is when you take a young baby, usually around 3 or 4 months old, and you put them on a blanket, and then you put something in front of them that they want, usually a snack or a toy, but even yourself, it's just something that they'll desire and want, right? And then you say, don't touch this, don't follow me, and you're supposed to walk out of eyesight. If the baby then reaches for the item, crawls towards it, or crawls towards you, you're supposed to come back and hit them, put them back
Mm.
on the blanket, say, no, that's bad, and then do it over and over again for about 30 minutes every single day until they stop reaching for the item and they don't cry.
Wow.
Um, yeah, it's to they told us that it was to teach blind obedience, and they
They
told
said
us
that, they said
that,
to it's
yeah,
teaching blind obedience.
yeah, in fact, they told us that if we didn't blanket train, then if we told our 5-year-old not to run into the street, that they would run in front of a car instead.
Wow. I
So
mean,
they equated it to this extreme.
if we could pause right there. I mean, I'm sure you
Yeah.
have thoughts, Derek, but like we talk on the pod all the time about how unconscionable it is that we're raised in the religion in the first place and forced into it. How unconscionable it is that most of us are dedicating our lives at like between 11 and 17 years old.
Hmm.
And this is like a despicable level of dehumanizing a fucking infant.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think about it where it's just like, I guess my thought process was like, everyone has their moment where they're like, this doesn't align, this doesn't make sense. And so, like, for you, that moment was this particular situation with your child. Trent's talked to
Mm-hmm.
as well about his kind of situation with his own child. um but it's, I don't know, can you describe to me why, I don't know, like, the structure of why they felt like something like that was even acceptable?
So that kind of goes back to the umbrella of authority that they teach. So basically, how they teach it is there are three umbrellas, and the highest one is the biggest one, and that is the father, the husband, the man, and it encompasses all three umbrellas. Then there's the woman or the wife or the mother, and her umbrella only goes over the children, which are right underneath her.
Mm,
And so the father has the ultimate authority to do anything to bring the family back under his umbrella and closer to God because he's the direct line to God, right? And so it does leave it so that way you have mothers who are blanket training because they feel as if they can blanket train their child, then their child will never step outside of their umbrella of protection.
mm.
And then you have husbands who are beating their wives and their children because they're stepping outside of their umbrella of protection. They just want them back into that protection zone so that way they're still under that authority and under God's plan.
So really, like, blanket training is also for the wife.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah,
for
like
sure.
it's gonna go down that pyramid for each person, that's farther down it. So
Mm-hmm.
part of that, from what you tell me, you experienced that with your partner?
So my partner actually was never a part of the IBLP. He was in
Mm,
Europe at the time I started blanket training. He was open to us going, but he really knew nothing about it. So it probably never would have lasted in the first place because, without that umbrella, there is no
yeah.
IBLP family.
Whoa. So that's a whole nother layer. So he was deployed.
Yeah. Yeah. He was deployed for 9 months. Shortly shortly before, or no, this one wasn't his deployment. He had just gone to the field because there was COVID 3 days after we had our son. The world shut down. So his deployment got moved. But in April or May of 2020, they sent him to the field for almost 2 months. So he
Mm.
was unreachable for the most part.
So I want to talk a little, like, we don't really pick apart dogma or teachings, like we're not fanatics about that, but I think this is worth talking about because
Yeah.
so they are Christian. They label themselves Christian, right? Okay.
Yes.
And they do use the Bible as the source of their dogma, but then
100%.
they add to it. Okay. So then Ephesians
I wouldn't
5:23.
necessarily say they add to it. They just
Okay.
follow it to the
Inter-
extreme strict letter of the law.
They're
interpretation.
And they
they're interpreting it
exactly, they
extremely.
interpret
Okay.
it to the highest extreme that most people don't interpret it for.
Okay. Well, my question, or I guess my comment, is about Ephesians 5:23. English Standard Version. For the husband is the head of the wife, even as Christ is the head of the church, his body, and is himself its savior. And then there's all these other scriptures where Paul is talking about like the organization of the Christian congregation, and the head of the like there's this hierarchy, and so it's
Yeah.
like God, Jesus, the congregation, husbands, wives, children.
Mhm.
That's the hierarchy that Jehovah's Witnesses learn. Is that hierarchy still like, is that hierarchy respected? Because like I hear the hierarchy you said, like father, husband, or father, wife, child, but then like are the men taught to submit fully to God as well?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah, so the men are taught that they are the direct line to God, and so that they should follow anything that God tells them to do. And that's part of why it's so dangerous because you could have a husband that's just like, God told me to beat your ass. Like, you
Yeah.
don't
Mm.
know, right?
So
Wow.
these men in this group, like, truly believe they're speaking with God directly?
Yeah.
Wow.
And they do believe that they're
Most
receiving
Baptists do.
instruction. Mm.
Yeah, most Baptists feel like you can have a direct conversation with God through prayer or even dreams.
Mm.
So if you were to talk with someone in that group, say a man, what does that actually look like? So you say through prayer. So in my mind, prayer is one way. Now you do say
Mm.
dreams. Do some of these men say, no, I literally sat and like heard God speak to me?
Yeah, sometimes they'll say they meditate. Bill Gothard says meditate a lot. They the big thing that I was always taught, and I don't know if this is just my parents teaching or IBLP, but the big thing that I was always taught was as you do your prayer, you should always have moments of silence for God to respond. So, like, if you're asking
Interesting.
God a question, then you should stop talking because God can't answer if you won't shut up.
Wow.
Now with this, the way I heard it, and please correct me if I heard it wrong, only the men hear back from God?
The women can hear back from God. The women do talk to God. It's just the man is considered to be the direct authority of God. And so a woman could be like, well, I heard that God told me to name our son Tom. But then if the man said, well, God told me to name our son Richard, the son's name is Richard. So
Hmm.
like the way she communicates to God just isn't as important, basically.
Yeah, it's interesting because the way my brain works is like there's already a problem even in that connection. You know,
Yeah.
like why would God talk to the woman and say name it this and then talk to the man and say name it that? It's like is God confused about what he wants the name to be?
Yes.
It's it's moments like this where you it's amazing to go like how did we believe this for so long? But you know, as you have already stated, this is how you grew up.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah.
We've been there.
you already had this foundation, so you know, pivoting to this other thing just can kind of continued you down this path where you truly believed. But and then Trent, I know you were getting back to the blanket, but um, this was your moment. So what was the moment as we continue with blanket training?
It was the first time I started blanket training, actually. I came back and I popped my son on the hand and I told him that was bad. And instead of putting him back in the blanket, once he started crying, I picked him up and I started comforting him. And I didn't even think about it, honestly. Like I just did it. And I remember my first thought was, crap, I broke the rules. I'm going to have to start all over again. I've just ruined this entire torturous experience. And I'm going to have to do it again. And then I remember my very next thought being, why is it breaking the rules to comfort my crying infant, especially when I'm the reason he's crying?
Mm.
And that was it. That was my only red flag. That was my biggest red flag. And that was the straw that broke the camel's back. I was done.
What I mean, it's a beautifully simple thought. I mean, your body is responding before your brain and heart, and what a beautiful instinct, you know, like your brain and heart are working as intended, you know, and that's just beautiful. Just like, why did I just do this? You know?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
it just shows like our some of our programming, you know, as creatures of this planet, like where there's a survival instinct and there's definitely an instinct with a mom to a child like no other. And then so your natural connective instinct is to do this thing, but you've been rewritten to have this new programming, and then that's where you know things clash. um
Yeah, for
So I
sure.
have
yeah.
another question. So
Okay.
they're like blanket train. You have to learn blind obedience.
Hmm.
Was there also a roadmap for building love and affection and safety and stuff like that, or was it only blind
They felt that that
obedience?
was teaching love and affection. They felt
Oh,
that if you could keep the children under this umbrella of authority through the blanket training, through the not watching TV or not like wearing shorts, honestly, like they felt that that was loving and protecting their child and showing them affection. Like if you go back and watch the TLC episodes of Mrs. Duggar, she almost never like is just oh, I love you so much, like come cuddle with me. Like it's always, this is how I'm protecting you, let's have this agenda, let's do this, let's, you know what I mean, like
Mm-hmm.
they feel
Control,
like by teaching
disguised.
these things,
Yeah.
exactly, by controlling their children and by protecting them, quote unquote, they are showing them how much they love them.
Which turns into the more I control you, the more I love you.
Exactly.
Which is a terrible corruption of
Yeah,
pure love.
Well,
for
it's so
sure.
interesting because it's like in my mind as a parent, obviously there is a level of control that is very appropriate. You know, you don't want your child running out in the street. You know, you don't want
Mm-hmm.
them to do, you know, bad things. You know, you want to kind of control his environment or their environment to some extent. But the problem I always think is when that level of control goes too far.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I think it's so great, Bree, that you had this moment where, you know, fortunately your motherhood, your wiring as a mother was more powerful than the other writings. And that's what led you to start down this new path. So once you had that moment, what did the time look like
Yeah, what
as you
was the
started to,
cascade? What was
yeah,
the
what
dominoes?
was the navigating moving forward?
So I think the first thing I started looking up was Josh Duggar. So I was actually a part of the IBLP when TMZ released their first article about Josh Duggar and his sisters. And that always felt a little off to me, but I was not only just a kid, but I was a girl in the IBLP. So I didn't get too much information besides the media is exaggerating, right? So that was my first thing, is I just started looking up Josh Duggar, and the more I looked into it, the more I was like, this doesn't feel like an exaggeration. This feels like he actually did these horrible things. And then I looked into Bill Gothard, who was sued for, I don't know if I can say the words,
You can say it.
SA.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he sexually assaulted a bunch of young women, like a lot. Uh,
Can you explain
and
why Josh Duggar was specifically so important for maybe listeners that don't know?
yeah, so when, okay, let me backtrack a little bit.
Yeah.
The TMZ article was released shortly before the Nashville conference of the year. So we went to yearly conferences, and the Duggars were almost always at Nashville. Nashville and the Texas one were their two main ones they went to. And so we got to the Nashville conference, and the very first thing we're told was, here are ID badges with barcodes. You have to wear these at all times because this article was released, and it's an exaggerated article, but it's made a lot of people angry. So we had to up the security. You cannot get into any
Mm.
building if you do not have this badge, period. And they're
Interesting.
telling like children this.
Just a quick aside, please.
Yeah.
Let's bookmark this moment. I'm envisioning the JW parallel, which is our conventions and assemblies.
We had
Um,
Okay.
badges.
yeah, we would have, what was it, like quarterly assemblies, which are like smaller, like districts would kind of all meet in kind of smaller assembly halls,
A
and then
1,000, 2,000 people.
yeah, and then we would have larger
That's small.
conventions. Yeah. Yeah. Then we'd have larger conventions where like a grander like district or region would meet, and those could be anywhere from like 10,000, 15,000, and then up to
Holy,
50,000.
I've been at
oh my.
conventions where I've been to the AT&T Stadium in Dallas, and it has been packed full of witnesses for 3 days that came from all over the world. They call it an international convention. Packed
That
the Dallas
stadium's
Cowboys
huge,
stadium.
dog.
I
What?
know.
Yeah. And
Oh
then
my.
the other parallel I had, was as it got along, you had triggered something in my brain that I remembered. We would wear badges as well, and there would be attendants that, as you're entering and kind of walking about the grounds, would make sure you're wearing that badge, because
Mm-hmm.
if you didn't have a badge, it indicated that you weren't a believer. Now anyone could come in, but
You get your
if
badge assigned by your congregation
you get it, yeah,
leader.
you get it before you go. So
Oh,
if
okay.
you're getting into that assembly or convention, um, attendants are laser locking in on you if you don't have a badge, and they are love bombing you like crazy. Hey, welcome in. Are you visiting? Where are you from? They want to quickly ascertain
They're
why
also
you're there.
spy networking you, and they are using groups of
Interesting.
people strategically placed throughout the assembly hall to monitor the movements and
Yeah.
location.
If you're going to be an agitator or if you're just interested, like truly. So I don't know if that's kind of what your version of conferences and these badges, but that's what I thought of. Please
It's
continue.
Yeah, it's pretty similar. So we would have yearly conferences, and they were split up into four. And so you had Nashville, Big Sandy, which is right outside of Dallas, Indianapolis, and I think it's San Francisco was the last one. I always forget the last one. Um, and so it's kind of split up into regions, and you go once a year, and it's just 7 days of basically nothing but sermons, but they have a ton of classes. It is closed. You have to pay to get in. So we always
Wow.
had the badges. But the year that the TMZ article about Josh was released, the badges then had like barcodes that you had to scan in with security before you could get in. That's the only year they did that,
Hmm.
weirdly enough. But
And it was just because of the gravity of what had come out about Josh.
exactly. I guess people were making some threats about Josh, as they should. Um, but yeah, it
And
was
what
it was pretty
and what did
shortly before
Josh
Nashville.
what did Josh do
Or get
that
accused of, or
get accused
allegedly.
of that kind
Yeah.
of made this be someone of importance?
So according to the TMZ article, he touched his sisters while they were sleeping,
Mm.
and he touched, I think it was a neighbor girl or a friend, something along those lines. And she told her parents, and her parents actually filed with the cops. But then the Duggars sent Josh to a military camp, which we find out is just Alert Academy, which is IBLP. Um, and they said that he was gone for however long he was gone for, and he was cured and he was all better. And so then no charges ever were filed, and it was kind of
Wow.
swept under the rug. And this was when he was younger, like a teenager. When it came out, he was already married to Anna. He already had a couple kids. Like this was at least decade, like 2 decades later, right? Um, so yeah, so that all came out, and everybody was rightfully angry that they did basically nothing about it. Um,
So
like
this was
except for Bill,
someone
the parents are in between the girls and the boys.
so this was someone you growing up um I don't know, had a level of reverence for, and
Yeah, for
He
yeah,
was one
sure.
of
just
the sons, right?
He's the
He,
oldest son,
the
actually.
oldest son, yeah.
Yeah.
so as you had this moment with, your child, and then you kind of started to navigate forward, this immediately kind of came on your plate. So
Mm-hmm.
you then had to make a decision. Do I kind of go down this path and see what this is all about, or do I abstain and kind of stay the course? You clearly decided, I want to look into this Josh shit. um,
Yeah.
what happened there?
It always felt weird to me. I remember we were all encouraged to talk to Josh and be supportive of Josh
Wow.
at the conference. I remember distinctly my parents having me and my sisters go up and shake his hand and apologize for how the media was portraying him. And
Whoa.
that was like something that's like a core memory of mine. And so it was just like that was the first thing I thought of as I was like deconstructing the IBLP was why did I have to apologize to this man for a rumor that
I think
never
core
made
memories are
sense to
supposed to
me?
be like a wonderful day at Disneyland.
I know, I
Yeah.
know, I know.
Well, our version of core memories are a little different.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's do you remember at the time thinking like, I don't want to shake this man's hand, or at that time were you still like,
Yeah, it never made sense to me because in my brain, if it's a rumor, I don't need to apologize for it. It's a rumor. It's not true. Why are you so upset about it?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so it never made sense to me that I was being told I needed to go and like be supportive of this man over gossip. Like it never clicked to me. I never thought he actually did it until I was an adult. It just didn't make sense that we were apologizing over gossip.
how old were you at this time?
Uh, that was our second conference, so probably around 15ish.
Okay, so there is a gap
Mm-hmm.
here between the Josh thing at conference and you with your
Mm-hmm.
child.
Yeah.
So this was something that was like an early seed that was planted,
hmm
and then you kind of kept
It's
this
just
with you
something
for a
I always
while.
thought was weird, and it just ended up
Yeah,
being the first thing I Googled after the
I
blanket
gotcha.
training.
So you Google, you start doing research. What I'm interested in is your emotional roller coaster that you embarked on. And
I was
like,
angry.
yeah, I bet.
I was angry about the whole Josh thing. I thought it was stupid that he never did anything more than Alert Academy, which is just mission work for wannabe soldiers. Like, it's really
Yeah.
not that difficult. Um, yeah, I was pissed. And so then I started Googling Bill Gothard, which didn't help.
Did they teach you guys don't Google stuff? Was that
It wasn't like explicit, but they didn't really like the internet all that much. And
yeah?
we were always told that, like, people don't want God's word out there. And so they're going to come up
Mm,
with lies. The devil is going to come up with all these lies. And to make sure that you're consulting with, your your pastor or your church leaders or your father about these lies before you make any rash decisions.
interesting. Yeah, it's pretty. I don't know. It's pretty similar with Jehovah's Witnesses. They definitely teach, and that's part of.
Like
Um,
genuinely witnesses aren't even supposed to Google Jehovah's Witness.
yeah,
Really.
Yeah.
There
yeah.
was a couple websites they didn't want us Googling. One is still active. It's Recovering Grace.
Mm.
And at going into Recovering Grace, I see why, because it's like just a huge expose basically of the
Me and
IBLP.
me and Trent are both just googling it now.
Yeah.
And then
There it is.
another, I don't know if this was a website or if it was just a Reddit thread, but it was called Free Ginger. And it was about Ginger Duggar. And it was all these people that, according to like the IBLP, were just creating all these lies and saying that Ginger was uh, not wanting to be there and was looking for a way out and was neglected and the least favorite child and da da da. But it also did a lot of exposing things about the IBLP and the Duggar family in general.
The very first thing on Free Ginger is not a Duggar fan site.
Yeah.
Uh, the very first line: "We exist to discuss the damage caused by fundamentalists."
hmm
Um, Interesting. Yeah. Okay. So you were googling. You were starting to do your research, which that's like a funny thing with a lot of like former cult members or high control group members is the mindset of do your research.
hmm
Start to investigate for yourself. So
There's
you
a, I've seen the thread. There's like an inflection point where there's something you can no longer ignore in your conscience or your heart or your soul or whatever, and you're like, I must. It sucks, but I
Yeah.
have to defile my mind. I have to do it. I have to look.
You mentioned being
Yep.
angry as you start to kind of go down this path of research. Were there any other thoughts or emotions that were kind of starting to come forward in your
Yeah.
mind?
Um, I think the next emotion was just confusion. And that
Mm,
kind of came more when I started looking up Bill Gothard. Because it didn't make sense to me that, like, someone who was literally excommunicated was still being used on a regular basis in videos and wisdom booklets. Like, it just didn't make any sense. Like, nothing made sense anymore. And then you add in all the pop culture that I missed and references and all that. Like, nothing made any sense. Like,
So
yeah.
you're in new ground, new territory, and you're trying to make sense of it.
exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, confusion definitely makes sense. I think that is part of the moment. The way I kind of always put it is like, we're all kind of born with a certain view of the world, a reality, and then the moment you kind of start this fracture, your reality starts breaking and shifting, and so there is a level of confusion and anger, and I don't know, it's kind of scary, and it's like, what's going on here? You know, ups down, downs up, and then you just kind of have to start going from there. So after you did this research with
Exactly.
Bill, or on Bill, um, like what did that bring forth?
It was mostly the confusion aspect. I didn't have a ton of information about Bill. We had always been told that he had stepped down due to some legal issues. So I that was before like the docu-series dropped, so there wasn't a ton of info, just that some women had sued him for allegedly sexually assaulting them. Um, and that he was actually asked to step down and forcibly removed. Basically, he was told never to come back to the campuses. And so, like I said earlier, it did set off like this level of confusion because we were still using all of Bill's seminars every single day. And we joined after Bill was excommunicated.
Whoa.
So we were still using all his seminars. We were still using the wisdom booklets that he wrote. Like it just was like another layer to the spiral. And then as I was still researching Bill, Josh Duggar got arrested again.
Wow.
Was there confusion within your family, or was this just confusion confined to you?
Ooh, good
It
question.
was just me. My parents had actually left the IBLP 4 years before. We just didn't know it. I just assumed they were still part of it because they were still, like I said, pretty legalistic, pretty fundamentalist. And they assumed I wasn't because I had moved away and was wearing tank tops. So,
Interesting.
um,
That's a
yeah, I
whole
didn't
nother
really talk
thread.
to my parents. Yeah, I didn't really talk to my parents all that much about what was happening because I didn't want to deal with the backlash that
So you thought
ultimately
they were
came.
still
But
in, and they thought you were
yeah.
still in,
Or
Mhm.
out.
They thought
or
I was
out.
So,
out.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
they thought I was out.
so then real quick, could we detour? So like, what made them leave?
Apparently, the last conference we went to, my parents got a bad vibe. They said every other conference felt welcoming and loving and healing. And the last conference was draining, apparently. And I didn't know this, but apparently, they spent most of the conference sitting in the hotel room and not actually attending any of the services. And so they never renewed their membership after that. They stopped going to conferences and stopped using the curriculum. But I
That's
had
really
graduated
funny.
that year, so I had no
Wow.
idea.
Didn't
I've
pass the vibe
heard
check.
I've heard that story from witnesses. Like we've talked about Derek's own experience at a convention. He's like he's there and he's like, "Holy crap! Like this is this is different.
Hmm.
It's broken. It's never going to be the same. I'm out."
Yeah.
So that's crazy. Across cults, having that same feeling.
Well, the other thing I think about too is I find it interesting that your parents didn't feel like they could have that conversation with you.
Yeah.
If this is something that's so important, as kind of a way of life, you guys all kind of joined together. There was something clearly there where they, as a unit, made that decision, but they didn't share it with you. Did you ever
But
talk
you
with
were
them why they
also
didn't?
you had moved out though, right? So like you were
I
living on your
did.
own.
So I
Okay.
was living with my grandma and then I was engaged. So as soon as my husband got back from his first deployment, we ended up getting married and I moved to Texas. So I think the biggest reason why they didn't feel the need to talk to me was I had pretty much disregarded the clothing restrictions of the IBLP and the music restrictions. Those were my two big things. I was still like a super devout Christian, but I wore bikinis. I got tattoos. I like to listen to Pitbull and Little John. Like, so they just kind of took those things that are relatively big changes, and just made an assumption. But they
Mhm.
didn't even think to consider about like what my actual mindset was and what my actual beliefs still were. But I did the same thing, right? I took
Yeah.
their visual appearances and didn't even consider what their actual mindset was. And so we kind of just did the same thing but opposite to each other.
Well,
I wonder if there's a slight level of fear or maybe some other thing, because it's like both of you guys didn't talk about it. Like,
well,
Yeah.
there's
I
something there.
was gonna say it sounds like a quiet understanding, even if it was
Yeah.
maybe like maybe wires were crossed a little. It's like a quiet
Yeah.
understanding, and that is actually super healthy compared to so many dynamics we have heard.
Yeah.
For
Yeah, I mean, we
real, like
still kind of have that dynamic where it's like I'm not a Christian anymore, but we don't really like talk about my beliefs because it's just going to cause an argument. We don't talk about politics very often because it just
Yeah.
causes an argument. And we have decided that our relationship between the three of us is more important than religion or politics.
Love it.
Love that. And this all happened quietly, which really says something, I think, about your guys' character and values, you know? Like, I
Yeah.
cannot tell you how much strife we have talked about in families over belief systems and shunning broken homes, broken relationships, like grief over having to believe that someone's dead because you'll never talk to them again, you know? And
Yep.
it sounds like the vibe in your family is like really healthy and like respectful. And you guys are like respecting each other, naturally respecting boundaries, naturally finding ways to coexist. Like, that's healthy.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
kudos.
It's
So where
awesome.
are
I
we
love
at
my parents.
where are we at in terms of I don't know, kind of your exit strategy? Where we pick up at?
Okay, so we were at I
Second
had been
arrest
doing
of Josh.
research about Bill Gothard, and then Josh got arrested a second time. So this was, I think, early 2021. So I had been kind of devolving for a few months now. And then Josh got arrested for child porn. And I don't remember exactly, but a few people have told me it's not just consuming, but also producing.
Oh,
Yeah.
what?
So that happened, and I watched his entire court case from start to finish. I couldn't take my eyes off of it, and I'm just sitting there with a 1-year-old husband deployed, and I just like can't stop watching the Duggars.
It's
That
like watching
was
a car crash.
it was, and it was honestly, I'm not even gonna lie, it was a lot for my mental health, and I probably shouldn't have done that when my husband was deployed. That was a dumb decision on my part.
You know what? We find
But I
parallels with that
did.
all the time now. Like once you start navigating down that path, it's really hard to go back.
It's like once
Yeah.
you take the pill, I hate to use the Matrix, but like once you take the pill, there's no going back. Like once you can't unsee it.
It's like binge
Exactly.
watching a show. It's like, dude, I got to get to the end of this season. I got to see where this ends.
Exactly. And that's kind of how I felt about the whole Duggar trial, because I was like, I can't. I had already struggled with that feeling of feeling lied to and being angry about Josh. And so I didn't want to feel like that again. And so I was like, well, the best way for me to do that is I need to watch it directly. And so I did. I watched every moment of that trial. It was horrible.
You
I
subjected
read every
yourself to it.
magazine.
You subjected yourself to
Exactly.
it voluntarily so you could be in reality. It
Exactly.
sounds like.
For sure. And then again, pretty quickly after the trial ended, the docuseries dropped. And so that dropped right before I got pregnant with my second son. And I took about a week to watch 4 episodes. It was not easy to watch, but I felt like I needed to. I felt like I needed that extra information, those pieces that I was missing. And I still feel like I needed to. I think it was important for me. One of the biggest parts of my deconstruction from the IBLP was a conversation I had with my brother. He watched the documentary and he looked at me when he finished and he was like, "Was that really like how it was for you?" And I was like, "Yeah, like I went to Journey to the Heart. I went through the same processes. There just wasn't a bill there. Like the conferences were exactly the same. The restrictions on the women were exactly the same. That was my life." And he had no idea. And I think that was the moment that I realized how different it was between men and women and how intense of an experience I actually went through. Like I wasn't just making shit up. Like I wasn't crazy.
Can you describe some things as you look back? You've touched on some things, but I'm wondering if there's some things for Trent and I and some listeners that as you look back, like these were very controlling things that they made us do, both men and women. Are these some things that I look back on now and go, this is totally weird? Were there any
Yeah.
things within this group that are just like super off?
Um so the biggest red flag that I should have seen was when I went to the girls camp in Northwoods. It's called Journey to the Heart, and it was supposed to be about, strengthening your relationship with the Lord. And they told us Wednesday night, We were there for 10 days, and they told us Wednesday night at dinner that this was going to be our last meal because they didn't feel like we were growing in the way they wanted us to grow. And so we were going to take the next 24 hours to fast. And so
Mm,
they locked the kitchen doors as soon as dinner was over, and we did not get any more food until dinner the next night.
wow.
And I definitely think that should have been a red flag that I totally missed. I was just like,
Whoa.
awesome. We
Was
have no
fasting
food.
something you practiced in the past?
My parents didn't fast. My parents don't like fasting. So that was, I knew about fasting, but actual practice was pretty foreign to me.
And it was unprepared. It was like thrown at you. Like,
Hmm.
hey, because
Yeah.
normally if you
It,
fast, there's a certain level of preparation that you want to do in order for it to be
yeah.
as healthy as possible.
Yeah. No, they told us Wednesday night, they were like, this is your last meal. And I looked at
Wow.
my friends and I like snuck into the kitchen before dinner was over and stole a bunch of rolls.
Oh my
So that
gosh.
way we could eat something. And we sat there and we didn't want to like break the fast because we were still trying to be like good Christian girls. And so the fast officially started at midnight, but the kitchen doors closed at 8, right? And so I stole all these rolls and some granola bars that I had found, and we sat up in our room and waited till like 11:30, and then we just ate as much as we possibly could. And then the second midnight hit, we threw it all away because we still wanted to be those good Christian girls. We still wanted to follow the rules.
That was incredible.
Okay.
I love that story. We actually just saw in real time the actual philosophical question of like, when is it okay to steal bread? Like you lived that, and then you actually modeled the only like way that it's okay to actually steal bread and have it be morally
Wow.
okay. That's
That
awesome.
that's pretty wild. I guess are there any other moments that you feel like you want to reveal?
um,
And
I
if there's
think
not, it's
controlling
totally fine.
wise would definitely be like a huge portion of control. Not only is the schooling, but the fact that you're not really supposed to watch any TV or listen to any music. They kind of cut you off from the outside world. Even though we're not living on a compound, we're still very secluded in that way. And then the homeschooling thing pushes it even farther. My Most of my education, at least from the time I was 13 up, revolved around the wisdom booklets and the pace booklets. It was a heavily Christian education, and so I'm missing a lot. I'm missing things like evolution. I'm just now learning about evolution at 27 years old. The Big Bang, all of that, like it wasn't even taught as a possibility. It just wasn't taught. And I see that a lot with other people as well, where we're just like kind of flailing as adults because we have so many gaps as children.
Hmm.
We talk about that all on every pod, how as Jehovah's Witnesses adults, like we're just out here, you really kind of hit a reset button and start out as a baby as an adult and have to relearn
Yeah,
the world.
Yeah.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, there's some stuff where it's like there's some great wonder where you have like the ability to approach things um, with like a childlike enthusiasm. Like, oh, I've never experienced this before. This is great. But then there's also like, you know, I don't personally do this, but it could easily be like, oh, I'm behind.
Yeah, I
And
I
it's
definitely
have
have
felt
that
behind it many
behind
times.
feeling. I feel behind all the time, especially going live. I'm still learning about things that I didn't even think of. Like a few months ago, I think it was actually the episode or the live right before Trent found me. Someone told me that normal people don't pay to volunteer, you just volunteer. That was crazy to me. That was mind blowing because you pay to volunteer in the IBLP, you pay to do everything.
wow,
So it never made like, yeah, that was a lot. That was a lot to process.
that is.
You can volunteer for the low, low cost of free.
That was crazy.
So you're speaking with your brother. You're kind of at this time frame. Um,
I'm curious about what
yeah,
the actual exit looked like the
yeah.
moment where you're like, I'm done, I'm severing the tie, and I'm moving on. Like, what did that look like?
I honestly do think that exit was the blanket training moment. I never thought that I would ever go back to the IBLP. I no longer wanted to homeschool in that moment. It was like every aspect of the IBLP just was done for me at that second.
Do you have to
It was just
officially like
deconstructing all
leave?
those ideas. Nope.
Do you have to so when
You
you
just
made
don't
that?
re-up your membership.
Yeah, basically. So basically what happened was because I had already graduated, my membership was already voided, right? I would have had to reapply as an adult, and pay the new membership fee as an adult outside of my parents. Which, like I said, we were planning on doing, we just hadn't done yet because I thought it was silly to do it until we had kids. And then I got pregnant and I was like, well, let's just wait because you're deploying next year. Obviously, this is before we knew COVID was happening, but we're like, you're deploying next year. When you come back, we'll apply and we'll go to our first conference. And then as our son gets older, I can homeschool and do all the things. So my official membership was technically over when I graduated in 2016. Um, it was the mindset mostly that
Yeah.
continued on.
Was there a level of community? Was there backlash, repercussions for you to kind of take this new direction in life?
So I got lucky. My two best friends that were in the IBLP had already left. They had left, they had moved to Dallas, which was 2 hours from where me and my husband were living at that point. As I said, my parents had already left. So I just had a couple camp counselors to block. Um, and that was about it. My
Cool.
That's
parents
great.
weren't in for long enough for anybody to really care about us. So
That's
That's
clean and
great.
easy compared to how
it
some
was
people
clean
have
and
it, for
easy.
sure. Yeah.
Exactly.
So
Yeah, I
we
definitely
talk
got
with.
lucky.
I think you did too. We talk with witnesses a lot about, like, for instance, you'll leave, or get disfellowshipped or kind of fade away, and you can mentally still be in for decades
Hmm.
after that.
Mm.
And it's like
Yeah.
you can still fear Armageddon or the end times, and still fear God, and still be praying and stuff. And it's just crazy how there is a separation between, like, my last time that I went versus, like, I'm mentally done.
Where are you
Exactly,
at
and
with
that
that?
definitely was for me. So I actually left Christianity about 2 years ago,
Mm.
completely. I'm an agnostic omnist now, and I am exploring atheopaganism because I really enjoy paganism.
Can you describe what that means for our listeners? Both of those.
Yeah, so an agnostic omnist is basically, I believe that all religions hold some sort of a truth to it and are just different perspectives of each other. I'm just not super convinced on the whole God part of it. If there is a deity out there, I think there's more likely to be multiple deities than just one. I'm just not convinced either way, and it really doesn't bug me either way. I'm learning atheopaganism and exploring atheopaganism, which is basically just a cultural pagan. I would do the celebrations, the routines, and I could even do rituals if I wanted to. I just don't like have to believe any of the gods are real. I think they're just like figure places, basically.
Mm.
I want to say I totally vibe with everything you just said. That's kind
Yeah.
of where I've landed too. And, like, me and Derek sort of pick and choose the things we want, the rituals and traditions and culture that we want to have. And we reserve the right to change over time, and
Yeah, for
Now,
sure.
when you talk about paganism, do you like what lens of paganism are you referencing? Or like, are you enjoying like researching some of the deities, some of the origins of some of the
Yeah.
holidays?
So I research it all. That's actually one of my live topics is because I'm a very big proponent of you don't know what you don't know. And so I had no idea where to start when I decided that I needed to leave Christianity, but I knew I still wanted to be like in some form of practicing religion. And so I started going live, and it was just pagans tell me your beliefs. And so it's a learning live, and we sit there and we listen to videos on YouTube about gods and rituals and crystals and holidays and all the things. And sometimes we'll do an open panel where people get to come up. Like I had one guy come up and he got to talk to me about Haitian voodoo. Like
Oh, I
that's
love it.
so cool. And so I try and learn about everything, even closed practices. If someone is in my lives that practices that, knowing full well that I probably won't practice any of that, but I want to know about it. I want to learn
That's
love
about it.
that.
it's really interesting you say that. There's a fascination for me as well. I'm actually Jehovah's Witnesses were not allowed to go to college or any school
Mm-hmm.
like past high school, and so I've recently begun to go to college for cultural anthropology, and so I have a very very big fascination with different cultures and the meanings and beliefs behind different cultures, and so I think hearing
Yeah.
that's pretty great. A goal of mine is to do
Yeah.
that, and then also eventually a degree in counseling. But that's awesome to hear that you have a similar fascination with stuff like that.
Yeah, I love that kind of stuff. I'm a history major, and I think I'm going to end up minoring in some form of like religious studies because that has always
Nice.
been my passion. I've always been into learning different mythologies and cultures, and I'm obsessed with anything in the past. Like I just want to know it all.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
trying to take next term a magic and witchcraft class.
ooh,
So that's
that sounds
it's definitely
exciting.
one on my docket. So
I want to
I
say, like,
understand.
I, I really love a lot of pagan rituals and beliefs and traditions, and like what Derek just mentioned, like magic and witchcraft. Like, there's this like level of just kind of common sense and manifestation and energy with
Yeah.
stuff like that that's really cathartic for me. Like for instance, tarot. I love tarot because the cards are really cool and it's tactile, but it also is a thought experiment for me. It's like when you are interpreting these cards, what feelings are you feeling? What worries or
Mm,
fears do you have? And that in itself is meditative and self reflective
Hmm.
and
yeah, for
powerful.
sure.
And so I don't know.
I think pagan rituals have that. Like when I first started learning about pagan beliefs and rituals, I learned about Beltane, and it's a holiday in February, and the whole idea is that you just expose yourself to nature. And when you think about it, like standing outside barefoot in February can be freezing, but it's like in this grounding, almost like centering kind of a way. Like nobody would ever think of going outside barefoot and just staring out into the abyss and meditating, but it does calm and recenter
Hmm.
your nervous system in a way that sitting staring at a computer screen doesn't.
And it's thrilling. There's nothing like being out in
Yeah,
nature when it's cold or windy or weird, and just like connecting with
and there's
nature and
no
realizing you're
bugs.
yeah.
Yeah, I feel like however you view the world is how you will view the purpose and meaning behind an action like that. So if you kind of have a scientific approach to things, you'll understand what your body's doing scientifically and
Hmm.
biologically. Yeah, if you kind of approach it with more of a spiritual view, then you'll recognize the spiritual aspects of how you're healing in your body. Is touching grass, and it's like what Trent said earlier. It's just like use what works for you.
Yeah.
Like if that works for you, great. But we all agree, like yeah, being stuck inside and behind a computer screen is not the way we're meant to be. So I'm looking forward to after this podcast to actually go outside. Very
I
excited.
guess I'll
Have
do it too.
fun.
If I have to go touch grass, I will.
I
It
won't.
sound
I
it
won't.
sounds like to me, because like we know there's phases. There's like the fracture. There's like the inflection point, the fracture, the the leaving part, and like the decision making, and then there's the rebuilding down the line. And everyone does it differently.
Hmm.
Some people sit in the anger. Some people go against the dogma and start to pick apart the dogma. Some people, jump right back into something as similar as possible that feels healthier. But it sounds like what you did was went into data collection mode. You're like, I don't know what I don't know. I need to increase the data and then start making decisions. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's pretty accurate. I definitely have felt myself feeling more confident about what I've known lately. I'm I've seen myself like participating more in like deconstruction debates as opposed to just listening, and so I definitely feel like I'm moving out of that stage. I just don't know where to yet.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah, totally fine. Yeah, I mean, life is a journey, it's explorative, and you're constantly just, taking in new information. And I think that's the really cool difference mentality wise where we're all at, where you now know like everything we do is just part of the process. Like if there's a bigger
Yeah.
world out there, and it's like it's how you choose to kind of take in all your information and knowledge and wonder. And I think it's really great. I am curious, you talked about your children and your partner, your husband. Is there anything to touch on there with kind of their stories and parallel to yours? Anything that you want to address
Um,
with that?
Not really. I mean, his family, he's a Christian. His family is culturally Jehovah Witness, but they don't
Mm.
really like act
Oh,
how most of the people I've talked to that left Jehovah Witness act. They're
interesting.
really chill people. They just didn't really celebrate holidays and they go to temple every now and then. Um,
Was there a moment with your husband where, um, I don't know, you clearly went through this process. Was there a moment where you guys had a conversation about it? How this was damaging and you had to kind of pivot and repair and move forward? Did you have
a
anything
little
like that?
bit. I didn't really talk to him too much when it was happening because I didn't want to bother him. One of the big things we're always told as military spouses is don't go to them with something crazy while they're deployed. You know,
Mm,
and so like even though towards the end of the deployment I started talking more, um, I didn't I didn't want to negatively impact an already insane time of his life, you know. And by the time he got home, I was already like, I was pretty much moving out of the anger and just moving into the confusion. So there wasn't much to talk about. We've kind of talked about like our faith and how we're going to raise our kids. And we've pretty much decided that like we'll share what we each believe and let them make their own decisions once they're older.
Love it.
how have you navigated the intense structure of the umbrella and how you view kind of that now
That
with your
one's
husband
harder
and your
for me. Yeah, that
yeah,
one's
I'd like
harder for me. One of the big things that I've noticed at least is I tend to ask permission over the stupidest stuff.
mm,
Like, I'm like, hey, babe, can I go to Target? And he's like, why are you asking me? You have your own car and your own debit card. Just go to Target. I don't care. Like, but then I notice, like, even though I don't ask him anymore, I'll still like mention it to make sure it's
yeah.
okay. So I'll be like, hey, babe, I'm at Target. Do you need anything? Side eye emoji. Like,
Yeah, yeah,
just
yeah.
in case. That's kind of been the biggest thing for me when it comes to him. I apologize a lot too, like a
Mhm.
lot.
So it's interesting that you bring that up because you clearly know, you clearly have these moments where you take pause. Um, but there clearly, from what I see from what you said, is still a little bit of a journey there as well.
Yeah, for
Well, that's
sure.
the secret where it
Thankfully,
never ends.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Thankfully, my husband is like really understanding about all of it. Uh, and he's just like, stop asking me, just go to Target. Or like, we went to church on Easter for like a Cub Scout thing. And he just sat there and he was just like holding my hand and making sure I was okay. And we made sure we sat on the end of the aisle in case I needed to leave. Like, he's just super awesome
Oh,
about
that's
all of
great.
that.
Yeah, love that. That's a lot of good consideration.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there will be, from what I'm seeing, some sprinkles of Christianity in your life. So the Christian God is not completely off limits.
Yeah, but between my husband and my parents, there's always going to be some form of Christian influences in our lives. My biggest thing is making sure that myself and my children understand that's not the only option.
Mm.
What's cool is if you have the freedom where you can say why you disagree with that, you can introduce a lot
Hmm.
of good rational thinking and critical thinking into your kids' lives.
Exactly. And that was my biggest thing is like I realized a few months ago my son had asked me about like why it rains or where rain comes from and my first instinct was to just be like, "Oh, God makes it rain." And I was like, I don't actually know the science behind that. And I know some mythologies about it, but I don't know enough that I would give him any form of a full answer like I would want to give him. And so it kind of started me on this whole like journey of learning so I can give them more information when they ask.
Which is the right way to be a parent. It's okay to say I don't know and then
Yeah.
educate yourself and then teach your kids what you learned, that's great.
Yeah, for sure.
Or just say you'll learn it in school, kiddo. Mind your
I
business.
say that way too often. I'm like, go ask your teacher. I don't
um
know.
I
Go ask
my
Miss Way.
My daughter's 10 now. And so she was raised around Christianity. She has Christian influences. Then I'm over here messing everything up for them, I'm like, so everyone's been really respectful. We've learned kind of the quiet understandings and the spoken understandings of how to approach it. But it's cool because now she's cognizant and she's self-aware. She's sentient now,
Yeah.
And, she was saying she didn't want to do something because she was worried that God would be upset. And she knows him as Jehovah. So she says Jehovah, which is kind of weird, but it's okay. And I just remember I shared this on a pod previously, but I just said, like, how would you know that God's upset with you? How would he communicate that to you? And so she just kind of sat there, and was like, I don't know. And I was like, yeah, me either. But, like, think about that, and just the freedom to be able to say that and say, hey, just think critically about it. How would you know? Like,
Yeah.
it's great. And to me, that is like freedom to choose. And it allows her to choose for herself, which is something I was never afforded. So that's cool that you guys are doing that. That's great.
Yeah.
How
It's
old are your
definitely a
kids
big
now?
thing for me. I have a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old.
Oh, 6 is a great age.
Oh my gosh, he's so much fun. And like because of how I'm raising him, he'll switch every other day on what he believes. And so the
Yeah.
other day he was like, "Look, mom, it's the sun, raw." And I was like, "What?"
Nice.
Like,
It's
and
like,
then he
when did
called the
we talk
sun
about
Jesus the
Egyptian
next
gods?
day. So
That's
That's
funny.
awesome.
he's so much fun
That's
and he's so
awesome.
smart. Like he is going to surpass my knowledge in like 3 years. I guarantee it. Like
That's super incredible. I mean, all you can hope for is that our children are better than us. That you leave a
yeah,
better
for
impact on
sure.
them. So it sounds like that's definitely happening, which is great. I don't know, like Trent, do you have anything else? Like, I think we've had a really good conversation. Bree, was there anything else that you really wanted to make sure people learned about your journey, your
Mm,
experience? Anything we need to touch on?
I think my biggest thing is just making it very clear that the IBLP is still active. They did pull most of the wisdom booklets off the shelves due to a lawsuit. Some sort of imagery was off or something, but they're putting them back out. And now they're claiming it's a Bible study, which makes it even easier for them to get it in even more places. And as we can see with Joseph Duggar's recent arrest, not enough has been done. So yeah, that's super important for me is the IBLP is still out there and still creating these harmful spaces that are allowing for a lot of children to get abused.
Yeah, I think that's super important. Their tactics to bring new people in, from what you can see, are pretty effective.
Yeah, I think so. I think they were extremely effective when they added the homeschool curriculum. And obviously, now that it's a Bible study, I mean, I've talked to people that were like, oh, I had wisdom booklets in my youth group on Wednesday nights. And I'm like,
Wow.
you had a what?
Yeah, just casually like, oh, I have these really terrible cult documents.
Yeah, like so clearly it's not hard for the IBLP to kind of snake its way into different religious spaces, especially when they're already extremely conservative.
I think it's so challenging for me mentally because Christianity is so dominant in all forms that it takes.
Mhm.
I don't I don't want to speak badly on any person that chooses Christ to be their God. I know for a lot of people, having that foundation is so helpful for them, for having that way of life and that kind of book to kind of guide them to make their life choices. And clearly, the morals it can teach, and these different kind of communities that come out of it are so great.
Yeah.
But the problem I have is exactly what you said, is people can kind of take that and kind of bastardize it and kind of sneak in with these pamphlets and these little things, and it's a wolf in sheep's clothing. It's kind of hidden within the larger, like, Christianity's fine, Christianity's great. Um, and so that's where I think it can be a little dangerous, because I mean, you've mentioned it. That's your story. Like, you grew up a certain
Yeah.
way and kind of found this other thing. and in your mind it's like, oh, this is great, this is fine, this is a little more structured, this is another kind of way that I can worship, and that's where I think the damage can happen. So I think it's great to call that out.
Yeah, for sure. I totally agree. I say it a lot that any religion can be taken to an extreme of a cult,
Mhm.
but Christianity seems to be the easiest to do so.
Yeah, it's just what we know. The Western Christianity, it's just easy. If someone were to come to any one of us and be like, "Oh, I believe in this crazy far out thing," this, the God
Yeah,
of
exactly.
it would be like, okay, but that's what I mean by. I mean, there's over 10,000 versions of Christianity.
Hmm.
It's just like, pick one that works for you, as long as it doesn't hurt or cause these issues. Do
Yeah.
you do you foresee yourself? Where do you see yourself with your TikTok, and kind of what you aim to do with that? What does TikTok
Um,
look for you moving forward in terms of this?
I would like to be more active when it comes to the IBLP spaces and holding safe spaces for people leaving Christianity or leaving cults or whatever. I'm a little restricted on how far I can reach myself right now, especially I mean, I have a 3-year-old, like he's only in school 3 days a week, and I have a 6-year-old who's in a billion different activities. So I don't
Yeah.
have a ton of extra time to like be making videos or things like I would like to. But yeah, I think that's my biggest goal is to have these spaces for people and then just to bring questions to people, like things that they may not have considered before when it comes to their faith, is another big thing for me.
Yeah, I think it's great. The funny thing Trent talks about a lot of is just, how powerful the Socratic method can be.
Hmm.
Um,
I'm no
you
good
know,
at the Socratic method, but I do like to ask questions.
well, it's like if you just ask a question and allow that person to genuinely answer, and you have a good conversation, and then you
Hmm.
ask another question, the power of someone to just
Yeah.
think about this, at different viewpoints, all sides, the good side, the bad side, the devil's advocate, like the power of just asking question, I think is really great. So I'm glad to hear that that's something that you continue to try to do when you have the bandwidth. um, you
Yeah.
know, I mean, you're obviously able to find people. You found Trent, found myself, and these other ones that you're, getting into this lively discussions with. I may have to join eventually.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I'm a noob on TikTok, but
You should do
um,
it. It's fun.
yeah, it's definitely yeah, something I'll try to do when I have a moment between, like between school and work and this. We all only have so much time. Um,
Yeah, for sure. The only reason I have as much time as I do right now is because I graduated. That was also a big reason why I waited so long to call you guys back because I was finishing up my degree and I was like, I can't,
Congrats.
no,
Well, yeah,
we're done. I
congrats.
can't do anything. Thank you.
Congrats.
Congrats.
That's, man, so great. That's such a challenge overcome. And what's your official degree?
I have an associate's in history. I think when I go back, my husband's getting his master's right now, and so that was just too much with me in school and him in
For sure.
school. So once I go back for my bachelor's, I think I'm going to do a major in history and a minor in religious studies.
That's so great.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
hell
think
yeah.
that'll really help out with whatever form of activism or kind of stuff you decide to do in this space, for sure.
Yeah.
Trent, do you have anything else? Anything that you wanted to kind of touch on before we close out? Do you want to
I
close out
probably
for
have,
us?
yeah, I've got like 5 bullet points probably.
Let's get it.
Um,
I bet.
there's been talk lately about the 10 Commandments in school here in Texas. And
Hmm.
there's always like, what are we going to imprint on our kids? And I just want to make a hot take. Like, I think that a summary of the bite model should be
Mm.
mandatory for school children to learn, like starting at first grade.
I'd be
Because
okay with that.
whenever you are aware of, behavioral control and thought control and emotion control and the methods that people use, it safeguards you as a child
Hmm.
against those things. And if you and I and Derek had all been shown the bite model in school, we might have been completely different people, you know?
Oh, 100%.
So
Yeah.
100%.
that's just one thought. And I wanted to say, like, as parents, I am teaching my daughter about the bite model and about Darvo.
What's
Darvo is the method of gaslighting. Basically, it's deny,
Oh.
attack, reverse, victim, and offender. And so it's basically the way that's when you bring a concern to somebody, or hey, you're violating my boundaries, you're hurting me. No, I'm not. You're hurting me by doing this.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden I've reversed the victim. I'm the victim now, or the perpetrator has become the victim. So I'm teaching her about these things because it's like super basic and extraordinarily protective.
Yeah, for sure.
And then
That's bullet point 2 of 5. Just
okay, working on it. The other thought is that fringe groups have become a trend. And so, like, Jehovah's Witnesses was a fringe group initially that became gigantic and formed its own religion. And
Mm.
now we've interviewed a few people who have been in different fringe groups. We've seen a fringe group of Baptists that was more like fundamentalist, not quite so extreme. We've seen a Catholic fringe group that went far above and beyond, went into almost torturous, methods of self-flagellation and punishment. And then, the IBLP. Did I say that right? Is it the IBLP? And
knocked it
so
out.
what's even more funny to me is, like, we've talked about me being an agnostic, me, not knowing if God's real. We've talked about all that. Paul and Timothy and Jesus and, the Gospels, and then also like the scriptures after Romans, the Colossians, the letters to to all the congregations. Paul literally and Jesus literally warned about this exact thing happening to Christianity, that
Mhm.
false shepherds would appear, they would pull followers away from belief, and they would contaminate the message that was pure from God. And so, like, the very first Christian congregations, Paul was like, yo, I already see this is going to happen. Like, we're going to have people splitting off.
Yeah,
Can't have it.
but Trent, our split off is the right one.
Right. I
So
think it's
Well, I
just so
think
all
funny.
those other ones is what Paul was warning about.
Yeah, it's the other ones.
I think
So,
I think the split was inevitable though. I mean, we were talking about it on one of my lives a couple of days ago. You don't actually get the full story of Jesus unless you read all four gospels. You can't have one cohesive group when you need four to, if you include the Paul epistles, 10 different books just to understand one story. It's not possible.
Well, and the unfortunate thing a lot of humanity likes to do is like we mentioned earlier, their own personal interpretation of the scriptures. There's a lot of cherry picking. One quick verse that if you don't read in full context, and that one small little thing can help support
Mhm.
your conversation you want to have, and like Trent and I said, we're not here to debate theology and scriptures. There are far better people, well equipped to know the intricacies of the Bible. Our conversations about people and how people are
Mhm.
affected because of a choice of either a man or a woman or a group of people that have decided this is what our interpretation of the scriptures is, or this is
Mhm.
our interpretation of
control.
control or whatever.
Right.
And this is usually the problem is men or women decide whether it's they truly believe that they're talking with God or some form of God, or they're just evil and this is the plan that they
Mhm.
have to start a following. Either way, it leads down these paths where abuse happens
Yeah,
and
for sure.
damage happens. And I think one of the biggest crimes for me that we brought up many times is the lack of not able in your formative years to be allowed to find your true authentic self early on, because that damage for some can be unrepairable,
Mhm.
and that damage for others can be a tough journey to find themselves. And the older you are, the harder it is, in my opinion, to accomplish that goal. Um, so I'm always grateful for anyone like yourself that had that wake up moment. You're free. You're survivors like Trent and I, and we're so grateful to have you on the pod just to share a portion of your journey. I
And
don't want to close.
you're welcome to our fireside chat. I don't know what we're calling them, Derek, but we have little
Oh,
community
yeah, we
chats.
have inner circle lives, which I think are really
Oh,
fun.
fun.
Obviously, these are really heavy conversations, or can be, but we also like to remind people that there's community out there. That's something that we lose out on because of this. We're very social creatures. So yeah, you're definitely welcome back to, and we do random topics about
We do
interests,
hobbies,
or
media,
where it's not
whatever.
so heavy. And
Yeah,
it's
I'm
always
totally
fun.
down.
So yeah, you're always welcome to those. But I tease as we close out is Trent. I apologize. You have 2 more bullet points.
Um, Thank you very much. It was really
No
great to
problem.
meet you
Yeah.
and like share your story. I was so curious, and it was great being able to hear it in such detail on pod live with you. And last bullet point is we should do a live together sometime.
100%. I'm so down. I will
I do.
warn, my lives with people never do well. I don't know why. If I have a guest up, nobody shows up.
Oh, that's is what it is. Well, yeah, if we show up one time, even if it's just the three of us, it'll be great. I
Yeah,
do think
sounds awesome.
I do think there's something powerful, as well, as we close out, of just having long form conversations.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know what it is with society, but we are so 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 30 seconds. And we've talked about what's really important for our bodies, and connecting and having conversations is so important, especially when you're aligned like we are with some of the stuff we've been through. And so I'm always appreciative when anyone wants to come on and really talk and be vulnerable and just kind of discuss their life's journeys. So, on behalf of Trent, thank you so much for being here. You're always welcome back on if you want to have something to say on pod. And like we mentioned, we'll definitely do some lives with you, which I think will be fun.
Yeah,
And
thank you guys so much for having me.
It was
yeah,
great.
it was really good to get to know you and your story a little more. And for everyone that's listening, I always kind of close out. We know time's precious, but we hope you enjoy these long form conversations, and just us being real, and having a conversation. So thank you so much again for your time. Thank you, Trent. Thank you, Bree. I'm Derek, and we'll talk with you soon.
Thank you for joining us on this journey in this era. If you found today's episode valuable, please share it with someone who might need it. Check the podcast description for our socials and other information.
Please consider supporting us at Patreon at patreon.com/culturepod. If you'd like to tell your story, please contact us at cult.ture.pod@gmail.com. Until next time, stay curious, stay critical, and stay free.